The chamber was supposed to be quiet, solemn, a place where the weight of America's decisions echoed against marble walls. But in that moment, the air cracked with a sound that felt wrong, disrespectful, almost cruel. A Senator Tommy Tuberville leaned back, smirking, then let out a laugh. Not the laugh of humor, but the laugh of arrogance. His mocking tone cut through the seriousness of the debate, landing squarely on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a woman who had fought her way into that chamber with fire, grit, and the weight of her community behind her. Viewers across the country froze. It was the kind of moment that demanded attention. On one side, a man cloaked in entitlement, dismissing with laughter what he couldn't confront with reason. Other, a daughter poised, unshaken, her silence more commanding than any rebuttal she could have fired back. Tuberville thought he had won the moment with ridicule. He thought the laughter would bury her voice. But what he didn't know was that Jasmine Crockett carried something far heavier than his. Condescension, something her father had left behind, ink on paper. Written under the shadow of a jungle halfway across the world. This wasn't just about politics. This was about legacy. This was about a young black woman, standing in the chamber of a nation her father had bled for in the sweltering fields of Vietnam. And when Tuberville mocked her, he mocked not just her, but every sacrifice. Every soldier's story, every immigrant, and every working class family whose blood and sweat still stain the soil of America's wars. The camera caught her eyes steady, unblinking, as if daring the arrogance in front of her to go further, because she knew what was coming. A letter, folded and preserved, words written decades ago by a man who wore America's uniform, who carried its burdens, and who had passed down his truth to his daughter. The laughter was loud, but what came next would silence it. The arrogance was sharp, but the letter was sharper. And as the room braced for her response, no one knew that the story of a father, a soldier, and a daughter's resolve was about to turn that chamber upside down. What happened next would not only leave Tuberville speechless, it would leave an entire nation stunned. The chamber was quiet, all eyes fixed on the exchange. Then came the sound, sharp, grating, almost rehearsed. Tommy Tuberville leaned back in his chair and let out a laugh. The kind of laugh designed not to share joy but to slice through dignity. He wasn't laughing at a joke, he was laughing at Jasmine Crockett. The smugness dripped from his tone as he leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said slowly, stretching out every syllable as if her very name was a punchline, "I'm not sure you even understand what's being discussed here." His words, heavy with arrogance, fell into the chamber like stones, each one meant to diminish, to box her into silence. Some of his allies smirked along, emboldened by the show. Tuberville chuckled again, louder this time, gesturing with his hand as though brushing her aside. It wasn't debate, it was mockery. A performance crafted to humiliate. But Jasmine didn't flinch. Her posture didn't collapse under his disdain. Instead, she sat upright, her eyes steady, her expression come almost to calm. The laugh that Tuberville wielded like a weapon seemed to hang in the air, begging for a reaction. He wanted her to stumble, to lash out, to prove his caricature. Of her true, the room seemed to pulse with tension. Was this it? Would she fire back with sharp words, or would she let his mockery echo unanswered? Tuberville smirked, certain he had won this round. What he didn't know was that Jasmine Crockett was holding something far more powerful than a comeback, something that would turn his smug laughter into stunned silence. And it all began with a single letter. Crockett's hands don't tremble. She holds the letter steady, like it's a torch that has carried generations of pain and honor through the fire of history. The chamber grows quiet, but Tuberville still smirks his kind, always does before. Reality crashes in. Jasmine begins to read, her voice slow, deliberate, carrying the weight of her father's soul. "Dear Jasmine, I am writing this from a base far from home. The jungle is thick, the nights are long, and the silence carries ghosts. But what keeps me going is the thought of you, the daughter I pray I live to meet again. Every syllable lands heavy. This isn't politics anymore. This is blood, sacrifice, survival." Tuberville shifts in his chair. The grin is gone, replaced by a stare that betrays unease. Jasmine doesn't look at him. Her eyes are locked on the paper, her father's words dripping with love, pride, and a raw truth that cannot be debated. The chamber breathes differently now. Staffers, aides, even fellow lawmakers lean in. For once, it doesn't feel like a hearing, it feels like church. Jasmine's tone sharpens, rising like a wave. My father didn't just serve this country, he bled for it. Yes. He carried the scars of Vietnam, so that men like you could sit in comfort and laugh at his daughter's presence in this room. The words slice clean through the air. Tuberville blinks, caught between disbelief and discomfort, the ground beneath him shifting. Letter continues. If you ever doubt yourself, Jasmine, remember your voice is my unfinished fight. Speak loud, because silence was never meant for us. The silence in the chamber is suffocating now, not out of indifference, but reverence. Jasmine finally looks up, her eyes burning through Tuberville like a verdict. He leans back, expression stiff, his laughter buried somewhere he can't reach anymore. The room knows it, the cameras know it, America, watching from their living rooms, knows it. In that moment, Tuberville isn't a senator, he's a man stripped bare by a soldier's truth. And Jasmine, she's not just speaking for herself anymore. She's carrying her father's unfinished fight, and the echo of his words lingers like a drumbeat that promises more is still to come. As the letter unfolded, the energy in the chamber shifted. The usual smirks, side conversations, and political jabs went quiet. You could almost feel the weight of every word echoing off the walls. Jasmine's voice didn't rise in anger. It dropped in power, calm, steady, almost like she was channeling her father's spirit into that room. She wasn't just reading a letter. She was delivering a message. Even Tuberville, who just moments before had been laughing and rolling his eyes, sat back in his chair, his smirk fading. It was no longer about politics. It was about legacy, sacrifice, and truth. And here's the part that gripped everyone watching. Jasmine wasn't using that letter to score political points. She wasn't performing. She was reminding that chamber and the millions who would later watch. The freedoms these senators so casually argue about were bought with blood, discipline, and sacrifice. This wasn't a clapback. This was a reality check. And the room had no choice but to listen. When Jasmine finished reading, she didn't slam the paper down. She didn't shout. She simply folded the letter with care like it was sacred. Then she looked straight at Tuberville. And here's the thing. He had nothing. No quick jab, no slick one-liner, just silence. Because how do you argue with that? How do you dismiss the words of a veteran who gave his life to protect the very democracy you're sitting in? Tuberville shifted in his chair, muttered something under his breath, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. His posture was exposed. His argument deflated. Jasmine had turned the tables without ever raising her voice. In a room full of noise, she used quiet strength to deliver the loudest blow. And at that moment, even those who normally spar with her couldn't deny the truth. Tuberville wasn't just debating politics anymore, he was standing on the wrong side of honor. This wasn't a victory built on insults. It was built on something far more powerful, respect for sacrifice. And Jasmine made sure everyone remembered it. The clip hit the internet within minutes. It spread like wildfire. News outlets ran it on repeat. Pundits dissected every second. Social media, it was a storm. Hashtags like hashtag Crockett clapback and hashtag veterans voice started trending. People weren't just talking about politics anymore. They were talking about principles. Veterans groups praised Jasmine for bringing their sacrifices into the spotlight. Families of servicemen and women posted messages saying she said what we've been wanting to say for years. Meanwhile, Tuberville's camp scrambled. His usual tough guy persona didn't translate well when paired against the image of a soldier's last words being read aloud. For once, silence hurt him more than any attack could. Even late-night shows jumped on it. Medians cracked jokes about Tuberville being knocked out without a punch. Memes exploded. Side-by-side photos of Crockett reading the letter versus Tuberville staring blankly, captioned with game, set match. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just a viral moment. It stuck. It shifted conversations. In town halls, barbershops, and living rooms, people who didn't even follow politics suddenly knew the name Jasmine Crockett. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment of truth to cut through the noise, and Jasmine delivered it with precision. And then, just when the room thought the moment had passed, Crockett leaned in, her voice calm but unshakable. She held up the letter once more, the edges trembling slightly in her hand, but her tone carried the weight of generations. "Senator," she said, locking eyes with Tuberville, "this isn't just paper. This is my father's voice from a battlefield you'll never know. This is the echo of every soldier who wrote home, praying their family would understand why they might never come back. You think this is something to laugh at?" The chamber fell into complete silence. No laughter. No whispers. Just the heavy sound of a truth too sharp to ignore. Tuberville, once smug, now found himself stripped of words. His face showed it all: confusion, discomfort, and the quiet realization that he had walked into a storm far greater than he expected. This was no longer about politics, or debates, or party lines. This was about respect for sacrifice, for service, for the unseen pain carried in letters like that one. And Crockett had just made sure no one in that room or watching at home would ever forget it. Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words carried the kind of weight that silence itself leaned in to hear. She folded the letter carefully, almost tenderly, before setting it back on the desk in front of her. "You see, Senator," she said steadily, "the difference between us is simple. You think this chamber is a stage for jokes? I think it's a place where the weight of sacrifice deserves reverence." You play two cameras. I carry voices that can't speak anymore. Eyes swept across the room, not just to Tuberville, but to every lawmaker present and to the millions watching. If laughter is all you have to offer in the face of sacrifice, then maybe it's time you ask yourself what service really means. It goes out there, she pointed toward the doors, toward the unseen nation beyond. Families are still reading. Letters like this. Still waiting for the knock on the door? Still paying a price that none of us in here will ever fully repay. Asterisk. Tuberville sat frozen. No smirk, no comeback, just silence. And in that silence, Crockett had already won. The gavel struck to move on, but the room knew nothing had moved on. A line had been drawn. A moment had been carved into memory. Crockett hadn't just defended her father's honor. She had exposed the emptiness of a man who tried to laugh it away. As the words from her father's letter echoed in the chamber, the atmosphere changed dramatically. What started as laughter and mockery quickly turned into uneasy silence. Senators who moments before wore smirks now exchanged glances, realizing the depth of what had just been shared. This wasn't politics anymore. It wasn't about party lines or personal jabs. It was about honor, sacrifice, and respect. Jasmine's voice didn't just fill the room, it pierced through it. Speaking for applause or sound bites, she was carrying her father's legacy, and through it she reminded everyone of the values that should define leadership. For the first time in the session, Tommy Tuberville had nothing to say. The man who always had a retort, always had a laugh, suddenly sat in silence, exposed by the truth that needed no defense. Jasmine leaned forward, her tone steady, but her words cutting sharper than any insult. "You can laugh at me. You can dismiss my presence here. But you will not dismiss my father's sacrifice. You will not dismiss the sacrifices of millions. Of Americans who gave everything so that we could sit in this chamber today." The silence in the room was deafening. Every eye shifted between Jasmine and Tuberville. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a rigid, almost frozen posture. For once, he wasn't the loudest voice in the room. Jasmine had taken control not by shouting, but by standing tall in her truth. One by one, heads began to nod around her, not in partisan agreement, but in respect. Even those who opposed her politically couldn't deny the courage it took to speak so boldly, so personally, in the face of open ridicule. Jasmine had done what few could. She silenced arrogance. With honor, and in that silence, she won. What unfolded in that chamber was bigger than politics. It was about respect, dignity, and the courage to confront arrogance head-on. Jasmine Crockett didn't just defend herself, she reminded everyone watching that leadership isn't measured by who can shout the loudest, but by who can stand the firmest when challenged. Tuberville tried to reduce her presence to a joke, but in doing so, he revealed his own weakness. Jasmine, however, revealed something far stronger: the power of character, of legacy, of speaking truth without fear. For viewers at home, this moment was a reminder that the real strength of democracy lies in voices like Jasmine's voices that refuse to be silenced, even when the odds seem stacked against them. And that's why when history remembers this clash, it won't be Tuberville's laughter that echoes. It will be Jasmine's calm, unshakable strength.